Here are some reminders to help you get the most out of your Dive Math 8-7 CD. First, work the problems with me. Work every problem that I work, take every note down that I write on the board, work every problem with me. If a problem set has several practice problems with it, you should work the first couple along with me, then pause the CD and see if you can figure out the next one on your own. Fast forward to the answer. If you got it right, great, you can move on to the next one. If you got it wrong, you could rewind and see what you did incorrectly. Next, pause and rewind the CD until you understand a particular concept. That's the great thing about using this CD lecture, is that you can basically rewind the teacher. Also, if you've forgotten how to do a particular concept that was in a previous lesson, go back to that lesson and watch it again and understand it again. Take advantage of the technology that's in front of you. Pause and rewind the CD until you understand. Don't go on until you understand a concept. It's also important to do all the problems in the problem sets. And if you need more help, you can also do the practice problems at the beginning of each problem set. My practice problems in the CD lessons are different than those, so those will give you some extra help. And also the supplemental practice, many of the lessons have supplemental practice problems in the back of the 8-7 textbook, so use those as well if you need some extra help on a particular concept. Next, make sure you show your work on tests and on homework. The way you can tell if you're showing enough work is if you can tell when you make a mistake where your mistake was in that problem. So be neat and organized with your work. Split your paper in two, right down the middle of it, work problems on the left and the right of it, front and back, and put a box around your answer just like I do on the CD lessons. Finally, have a good attitude. The best math program in the world will not make a bit of difference if you have a bad attitude. If you're like, oh, I don't want to study, I don't want to do this. Have a good attitude. Maybe math isn't your favorite subject. That might be the reason you need this CD to help you, is because you struggle with math. That's okay. Not everybody's great at math. You don't have to be great at math, but you do have to have a good attitude. You have to make the best of every opportunity God puts in front of you. So be thankful that you have these CD lectures to help you with your math, and go out and make the most of this opportunity to learn, and I know God will bless you for your effort. Lesson 1 is a review of arithmetic. Before you get started with this lesson, make sure you've already done the facts practice for this lesson. That would be Test A in the Test Masters, and then do the mental math and problem solving section at the beginning of the lesson. You should do that before you do every lesson. You should do the facts practice, mental math, and problem solving before you start the lesson. Well, this lesson should be a review, and maybe you don't remember what arithmetic means, but basically there's 4 different operations that are included within arithmetic. Those 4 operations are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. To review these operations, we'll do some arithmetic using whole numbers and using money. Before we review arithmetic operations, let's just review counting numbers, whole numbers, and then talk a little bit about money and how to write values with dollar signs and cent signs. Counting numbers, just think of counting on your fingers. You can start with 1, and so that's what you start with when you're thinking of counting numbers. And we'll talk about a set of counting numbers. We'll use parentheses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll put like dot, dot, dot. That says that you're continuing on forever. Counting numbers are numbers that you can start with 1, 2, 3, 4, to infinity. Infinity means forever, not ending. Whole numbers, that's the set of numbers. They're kind of like counting numbers. The only difference is that you start with 0. So then you can go 1, 2, 3, dot, 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 so on, to infinity. Counting numbers start with 1. That's just like counting on your fingers. You can start with 1 finger, then hold up 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Whole numbers are different just because they begin with 0. Now let's talk about indicating amounts of money. Let's say you want to write 50 cents on your paper. There's a couple of ways you could do that. You could write 50 and then put a cent symbol after the 50. Or you could write it in terms of dollars, and that's done. 0, you put a decimal point, 50, and a dollar sign in front. That means 50 cents too. But you're saying half a dollar, $0.5. Let's talk about 150 cents. You could write that in terms of cents like this. In terms of dollars, you could write it 1.50, $1.50. So just keep that in mind when you're indicating amounts of money. The cent sign, that goes at the end of the numerical value, and the dollar sign goes at the beginning. Anytime you have a monetary value that includes dollars and cents, the cents part goes after the decimal point. Well, now let's go ahead and review our arithmetic operations. We'll start with addition, then we'll do subtraction, multiplication, and division. Now look at this practice problem. 25 plus 117 plus 3,215. Now remember, you're supposed to work every practice problem that I work. And also remember that my practice problems are not the same as the ones in the textbook. I do different ones, and that allows you to have some more practice in case you need it. You can do my practice problems, then do the ones in the textbook if you need some more help. When you have an addition problem like this, the best thing to do is rewrite the problem vertically, one number above another one. So let's start with the largest number. We'll do that one first, 3,215, and then we'll put the 117 underneath it, and then the 25 underneath that. Identify that we're doing addition with the plus sign out to the left. Now to do addition on this problem, we just add up each column. We start with the ones place, that's the far right column of numbers, and we add the 5 and the 7, that would be 12, and then add the bottom 5 to that, that would be 17. So we put a 7 down here in our answer, and we say that we carry a 1 to the tens place. We need to add that 1 to the other digits that are in the tens place. So we say 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3, plus the 2 would be a 5. Now we don't carry anything to the hundreds place, so we just add the 2 and the 1 that are in the hundreds place together, and we get a 3. And then we just have a 3 in the thousands place, so we don't have anything to add to that. So we bring a 3 down, and there's our answer, 3,357. Now we don't have to, but if we want to, we can put a comma to distinguish the thousands place. Let's talk about the different parts in an addition problem. The numbers that we added together. We consider those the add-ins. That's the name that those numbers are called. The result of an addition problem, that's called the sum. And those are important things to try to remember, especially the result of addition, because a lot of times you'll see problems where they ask you to find the sum of two numbers. Well, if you don't know that sum goes with addition, you won't know whether to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. So the sum, that's the result of an addition problem. Let's do another addition problem. This one is dealing with money, $2.33 plus 51 cents plus $4. Well, just like practice problem A, let's rewrite this problem vertically, and we'll just start with $2.33 plus 51 cents. Now remember, we can write that in terms of dollars. We can just say $0.51, and that's important to make that change there. We don't want to have 51.00. Remember, when you write cents in terms of a dollar amount, you need to put it after the decimal point. So 51 cents is $0.51, and then $4, we can just write that 4.00, $4 and no cents. And let's put an addition symbol. So those are our three add-ins, and we'll add those together to get a sum. Start with the first column there. That would be our hundredths place, not hundreds, but hundredths place. And so we say 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 0 would be 4. And then go to the tenths place. 3 plus 5 is 8, Put our decimal point, and then we have a 2, a 0, and a 4. That would equal 6. $6.84. We need to remember our dollar sign since we're talking about money. So that's how we can write our answer. Now let's talk about subtraction. Look at practice problem C. 1,321 minus 199. You might also hear someone say that we're subtracting 199 from 1,321. Just like addition, let's rewrite the problem vertically, but this time it's always important to put the largest value first. And so we'll have 1,321 and then the 199 underneath. Let's put our minus sign out to the left to indicate that we're doing subtraction. Now we look at our far right column, that's our ones places, and we have a 1 minus 9, or we can say we're subtracting 9 from 1. Well, we can't do that. You can't subtract a larger number from a smaller one, so what we have to do is borrow 1 from the tens place. And so if you remember your place values, that 2 that's in the tens place, that's really like a 20. And so we can cancel that out, and let's borrow 10 from that. And so 20 minus 10 would be 10, and so we put a 1 up above there, and then we bring a 1 over in front of that other 1, and now we have 11. We've borrowed 10 from the tens column, added that 10 to the ones column, so we really have an 11 now. 11 minus 9 is 2. Now let's go to the tens place. We have 1 minus 9 again. We can't do that, so we have to borrow from the hundreds place. We borrow 100 from the hundreds place, and that means that 3 will become 200, and we bring that 100 that we borrowed, bring that over. Now we write 11. It's really 110, but we just write it 11 minus 9 is 2 again. Then we say 2 minus 1. Since we're in the hundreds place, we can consider that 200 minus 100 is 100. And then bring the 1 down because there's nothing to subtract from it. So it's just 1 minus 0 is 1. 1,122. We could put a comma there. And that's our answer. Remember your place values when you're working with addition and subtraction. That will help you understand why you can borrow a digit from one column and put it over in the other column. Now, in addition, the numbers that we add together are called addends. The product or the result of addition, that's called the sum. In subtraction, we have different names for the two numbers that are being subtracted. The larger number is the minuend. The smaller number is the subtrahend. Now those are kind of strange names. Those aren't that important to remember, those names. What is important, though, is the result of subtraction, what that's called. That's called the difference. So if someone asked you what's the difference between 7 and 2, you would know to do 7 minus 2 is 5 and not do 7 plus 2. Let's do a subtraction problem with money now. $3 minus 62 cents. Well, you might think of that real quick and say, oh, 3 minus 62, I can't do 3 minus 62. You've got to look at the signs that are with those two numbers. You've got a dollar sign with the 3, so that's $3 and then 62 cents. Let's rewrite this problem vertically and write everything in terms of dollars. So we should say 3.00 for $3, and then 62 cents, we should say 0.62. Put our subtraction sign out to the left. And then we begin our subtraction with the far right column, or the hundredths place. And we see that we cannot subtract 2 from 0. We need to borrow from the tenths place, but we can't because it's just a 0. So we borrow from the ones place. We cancel the 3, put a 2 up above it, and we bring 10 tenths into the tens place, or tenths place. Now let's borrow one of those tenths. Cancel this and put a 9 up here, and we'll bring that over to the hundredth place. So now what we're saying is 10 hundredths. So just write that over to the side. 10 over 100. 10 hundredths, that's the same thing as 1/10, right? We borrowed 1/10 from that tenths place. And we can do our subtraction now. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 6 is 3. 2 minus 0 is 2. $2.38. Make sure we write our dollar sign out front to indicate that we're working with money. So addition and subtraction, they look similar to the way we write the operations out. Addition and subtraction, we both write the numbers vertically and then work the problems, do the addition or subtraction starting with the far right column. One big difference is that in subtraction we always write the larger number on top of the smaller number. The result of subtraction is called the difference. The result of addition is called the sum. Now let's talk about multiplication and division. Look at practice problem E, 312 times 30. Now again, just like in addition and subtraction, we can rewrite this problem vertically, and let's put the larger number on top. That's usually what I do on a problem like this. And the 0, we don't have to worry about the 0, so let's just write this 3 and put the 0 out to the outside. Put a multiplication symbol to indicate that we are doing multiplication. We can't forget to add the 0 back in when we're finished though. And in fact, we might just want to go ahead and write it in our result. Just go ahead and put that 0 down there so we don't forget it later. Now what we do is just take that 3 and multiply it by 312. And we start with the ones place. We say 3 times 2, that's 6. Then 3 times 1 is 3. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So we end up with 9,360. So just think about that 0, that extra 0 there that we didn't really use in the multiplication, but we needed it for our result. We said 312 times 3, that's 936. Just think about that. If 312 times 3 is equal to 936, then 312 times 30 would be 9,360. Let's talk about the different parts of a multiplication problem. The two numbers that we multiplied together, we call those factors. The result of multiplication is called the product. Try to memorize those names, especially what the result of multiplication is. That's the product. Let's do a multiplication problem that deals with money now. $2.15 times 40. Let's just say, for example, you had 40 pounds of chicken that you needed to buy, and it was $2.15 a pound. To figure out what your total cost for that chicken would be, you'd do $2.15 per pound times 40. Again, we can rewrite this problem vertically, and so we'll say 2.15 times 40. There's a 0 there on the end, and so we'll just ignore that, put it out to the outside, and we'll add it in later and put our multiplication symbol to indicate multiplication. Just go ahead and bring the 0 down, and let's start doing our multiplication. 4 times 5 is 20, so we'd have a 0 here, carry a 2. 1 times 4 is 4. Add that 2 on that we carried, and so that would be a 6. And then 4 times 2 is 8. Now notice that we ignored that decimal place in the $2.15 until now. What we need to do is go ahead and put it back in the right spot, 2 places over, right there. And just think about that answer, $86. Does that answer make sense? Well, $2 times 40, that makes sense, so that would be 80. 2 times 40 is 80. So yes, that does make sense that $2.15 times 40 equals $86. If we ignore the decimal place, basically what we're saying is 8,600 cents. If we put the decimal place back in, we're saying $86. Look at practice problem G, 3 times 85 cents. Let's go ahead and work this problem and write the answer in terms of dollars. Again, let's work the problem vertically. We'll put the larger number first, 85 times 3. And then we'll say 5 times 3 is 15. Carry 1. 8 times 3 is 24. Now, just keep this in mind. You don't add the 8 and the 1 together first. You don't say 9 times 3. You do 8 times 3. You do that first. Then you add the 1. So 8 times 3 is 24 plus 1 is 25. Just be careful about that if you've made that mistake in the past. And now we have 255 cents. Well, think about it. How do you write that in terms of dollars? Well, you just put the decimal place in, 2 from the right, and so you'd say $2.55. That's how you'd write that answer in terms of dollars. Or product, I guess we should say, since we're doing multiplication. The product of those two numbers is $2.55, or just 255 cents. Now let's go on to the most challenging of the 4 operations, and that's division. Now some people, when they face a challenge, they tend to get scared or get cowardly and want to quit, give up, run, and turn the other way. I'm sure you're not one of those people. I'm sure you're somebody who wants to face a challenge, try to figure out how to get past that challenge and improve yourself. And I'm sure you want to do your best for God too. God has given us mathematics as a way to interact with each other in our everyday lives, as well as a tool to help us to study His creation. So I know you want to do those things and you want to do your best at that. So let's figure out or review division. Remember, to do a division problem like this, you need to use your division box, and you put the 8 on the outside and the 489 on the inside. And then you think to yourself, 8 goes into 4 how many times? Well, it doesn't go into 4. The smallest thing you could do is do 8 times 1, which is equal to 8. So what you have to do is look at the first 2 places, the 4 and the 8, or 48. And you say 8 goes into 48 how many times? And you think of, well, 8 times 4 is 32, 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 6 is exactly 48. So you know it'll go into 48. It goes into it exactly 6 times. And you write that 6 up above the division box, and you say 8 times 6 is 48. Write that product there. And now you have to do subtraction. We just did multiplication to solve this division problem. You also have to do subtraction. You subtract the 48 from the 48 and you get 0. And you bring down the 9. And you say 8 goes into 9 one time, because 8 times 1 is 8. And so you put a 1 right here. And you say 8 times 1 is 8, and you bring that 8 down right there. Do subtraction on this. 9 minus 8 equals 1. That's your remainder. And so you say 61 R for remainder 1. That's your answer. On a division problem, it's a very good idea to check your work. So let's go ahead and do that. We have to multiply 8 times 61. Let's just do that over to the right. Eight times 1 is 8. And you don't carry anything over. 6 times 8 is 48. So we have 48. We need to add the remainder onto that. So we're doing 488 plus 1 is 489. That was our original number that we divided by, so we know we did the problem correctly. Now, we've talked about all the different names for the different parts of these operations. We haven't talked about division yet, so let's go ahead and do that. The number that we put inside the division box, which is usually the bigger number, that's the dividend. The number outside is the divisor, and the answer is the quotient, or the result of the division problem is the quotient. So we've done addition. The result of that is called a sum. Result of subtraction is the difference. Result of multiplication is a product. Result of division is the quotient. Let's go ahead and do another division problem, this time dealing with money. $7.41 divided by 3. Let's say you had 3 people and you wanted to split $7.41 between those 3 people. Well, you do a division problem to figure out exactly how much to give each person. This may not look like a division problem because we didn't use the division sign like we did in problem H. It looks like a fraction. We have a fraction bar there. That's also division. Anytime you have a fraction bar, that's a division problem as well. And so the dividend is $7.41. We just can rewrite that. 7.4, we won't worry about the dollar sign right now. Put our division box around that, and then the divisor goes on the outside. What I like to do is go ahead and put the decimal point in the quotient to start with, and that helps me separate the dollar side from the cents side of the problem. And so we just go ahead and start doing division. We think of 3, how many times that would go into 7. We go into that 2 times, so we put a 2 up here in the quotient. 3 times 2 is 6. Do subtraction. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down the 4. We don't bring down the decimal point. We don't worry about that. And so we say 3 goes into 14 how many times? Well, that would go into that 4 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Do subtraction. We get 2. Bring down the 1. 3 goes into 21 exactly 7 times. Put the 7 up there. And do the subtraction down here. We get 0 for a remainder. $2.47 is our answer. Let's just write that over here with our dollar sign. $2.47. Like we did on the previous problem, we checked our work to make sure that we did it right, and we checked that by multiplying the quotient or the answer by the divisor. And so let's do that. 2.47 times 3. Remember, we can ignore that decimal point until the end. We put it back in. 7 times 3 is 21. Carry the 2. Do the multiplication. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. Carry another 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Now put the decimal place back in. 2 to the left. And that's our answer, $7.41. That's our original dividend. So by checking the work doing multiplication, we know we did the problem correctly. We have one more part to this lesson on variables and evaluation. I know this lesson has been a little long, but that's usually how the first few lessons are. There's just a lot to review, and the Saxon method, they just want you to get back to what you were doing in the previous book, get back used to doing that before you start learning new material. So there's a lot of review in these first few lessons. Most of the lessons will be 10 to 12 minutes long though. So this part on variables and evaluation, again, this is something you did in Math 7-6. And if you remember, what you do there is you have variables. Those are usually represented by letters, and you can substitute any numbers into those variables. So we have 4 problems here, and up at the top it says evaluate each expression if x equals 15 and y equals 5. So all you have to do is substitute 15 in where you see x, 5 in where you see y, and then you just solve that operation. This is very important because it's the very basis for algebra, which is what you'll be learning as you get into high school and towards the end of Math 8-7 as well. Algebra deals with working with variables instead of with actual numbers. So if you want to, pause the CD, try to work those 4 problems, or you can follow along with me. So on J, x plus y, if we evaluate that, find a value for it, that's what evaluate means. X is 15, so we'll have 15 plus y equals 5, that would be 20. So that's what x plus y is if x is 15 and y is 5. Now on K, x minus y, we have 15 for x, 5 for y. 15 minus 5 would be 10. Now, L, X times Y. When you see two variables one after another in a math problem, that means multiply them. There's no multiplication symbol in between those, so it's just understood that that means multiplication. So it's X times Y, or 15 times 5. A little dot is a symbol that's often used for multiplication, and that would equal 75. We've evaluated that multiplication problem. Division, X over Y. It looks like a fraction, and that's one way to think about a division problem. You can write it like a fraction. X is 15, Y is 5. 15 divided by 5 equals 3. So there's our answer. Remember, if you're unsure on any of these problems, you can always do the problems that they have in the Saxon book too. My practice problems are very similar to theirs, just a little bit different numbers so that you have something different to look at. So do mine first, do them along with me, or pause the CD, work them, and then fast forward to see if you got them right. Then, if you need more help, do the Saxon problems as well. Okay, well that's all for lesson 1.